Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to a new episode of T20E World. Hugo here, and I've got two special guests. And if you've ever heard of Podfest Global, well, you guessed it right. I've got two key players from Podfest Global. I'd like to introduce them to you, Krimitsos and Andrew Weiss. Welcome to T20E World, and thank you so much for taking time. I know how busy your schedule is.
Hugo, thanks for having us.
Yeah, my
I'm
pleasure.
excited.
Yeah. So listen, guys, just so my audience knows, we met about a year ago because I attended, when I launched this podcast, T20E World, I attended one of your first virtual events. I was fascinated by it. It made me dig deeper into the world of podcasting. But this recent Podfest Global 2021, I have to tell you, was off the charts, crazy big. So I want to introduce the both of you. I want you each to just briefly give us a little bit about your background. I know you guys are consultants, speakers, entrepreneurs, and obviously I think, Chris, you're a podcaster, and Andrew, I think you're going to be coming out with a podcast, if I'm not mistaken. So Chris, a little bit about yourself, please.
So my background, grew up in New York, tri-state area, representing, moved to Florida, like just about the whole tri-state area, which a lot of people could relate to. But when I came down here, I kind of, New York in general is a very dark place in that people are always telling you what you can and cannot do. Everybody has an opinion about everything. So when I set out to Florida, I said, I'm going to create a community of really like-minded people. And I started creating events of like-minded people that want to support each other. 2,000 events later, we discovered something called podcasting about 7 years ago. Yeah. And one of those little events kept doubling in size, and we let it double in size and let it go where it is. And COVID struck. We had 2,000 attendees, literally 2 days before the shutdown. So we were very lucky in that our people were safe. We were able to do an event in March, and then the world got shut down, or at least that's what it seemed like to all of us. And we asked ourselves, okay, we were very fortunate that we're able to survive financially, but what can we do to support all these creators, and not only people that are business owners that need other outlets? So we decided, let's do a virtual event. I met Andrew, who was project managing his own events, and he was looking to work with other people. And I said, Andrew, do you know these technologies? He said, yeah, I do. And that's how Pod Global was formed. We reached out to the Guinness World Records community or company, whatever you want to call them. And they said we were willing to certify a record in this arena. And we all collectively set a Guinness World Record. But it was a massive undertaking. One of those things, had we known what it would have been, I don't know, I think we would have done it, but it was a lot of work. And since then we've done 5 or 6 events virtually, and we love doing it. We're good at it, but it took a while to figure all the nuts and bolts, so to speak.
Oh yeah. Andrew, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm actually West Coast representing over here, born and raised in Oregon. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in an entrepreneurial household. And I was able to know at a young age that entrepreneurship is possible. And a lot of people aren't aware of that, which is unfortunate. And I was definitely lucky enough to, have my father be an entrepreneur. And when I was in high school, I was that nerd that went to business camp and spent a week learning all these business skills. And then afterwards, I actually ended up interning for that business camp, and then actually ended up working for them. And as part of working for them, I gave over 1,000 presentations in 3 years, traveling around the entire state of Oregon and teaching these high school students professional skills. And so it's definitely really fulfilling, be able to give back to the state of Oregon, because we unfortunately need to improve our education system. And then since then, I decided that based on my own entrepreneurial skills, that I didn't want to get paid nonprofit rates anymore. And so I decided to leave and become my own public speaking and sales coach. And like Chris said, I decided to put my own virtual event together called Fight the Fluff, because awesome. both of Chris and our pet peeves are speakers who go up on stage and then they talk but don't actually say anything. Like they're just like, oh, let me talk to you about how important email marketing is and how great I am and all my accomplishments, and they don't actually give any tangible advice on how to help the audience. And so I made an event that was anti-fluff. And one of the speakers, Tyler Basu, enjoyed the event. So he introduced me to Chris and said, hey, Andrew just did this event. We used Huva, we used Zoom. Chris is like, well, I like Whova and Zoom. Andrew, can you help me with my event? And we've decided to work together ever since.
Awesome team, guys. And I'll tell you, so our podcast, obviously, and our audience, is really geared around the entrepreneurship world, a lot of the business and life lessons. When I called you onto the this episode, I knew we had just to share not only about Podfest Global, but really the undertaking, right? I mean, there was a vision behind this, and that's something I wanted to ask you, Chris. And aside from just the vision alone, I mean, all the skills like time management skills, partnering with the right players, and just driving everybody and keeping everybody highly motivated, because it was huge, And Chris, at what point did you actually have this vision to take something that, was your traditional go-to exposition at a local hotel or maybe an arena, right? I know the pandemic forced us to go virtual, but at what point did you have this vision that you want to take it to such a level that you're going to set a world record for it?
So we were going to do virtual events anyways, because just good business. A
Yeah.
lot of us know, so we know tech. However, I don't think we would have done a Guinness World Record qualifying event had it not been for the pandemic. So a couple of things happened. One is we realized everybody's home globally, right? So we're like, okay, when is the whole globe going to be in the same situation at the same time? So understanding, one thing I learned a long time ago in business is timing is probably the most important factor, along with execution and all the stuff, but timing. I saw a friend of mine once, he had a merchant processing company.
Yep.
And they were the last to upgrade their systems. And because of that, new technology came out and they were able to use new technology and leapfrog across. So that's lucky in timing, but timing is very important. So I recognize one, timing was prime for a global virtual event for podcasts. That's the one thing. Two is I needed talent and I needed a great project manager. And Andrew, I found someone that understood the exact tools. So that would be more the universe providing, because to find someone like Andrew is a needle in a haystack in general. And then the last thing I realized was I had to test before I went all in, because to do it at the level we did, it cost quite a bit of money because of marketing budgets. Andrew could attest, it's not like your normal virtual event. I know you've been part of it. So the first thing we did is we put the idea out to our community and we held a meetup, a Zoom meetup, telling them here's what we're thinking of. And here's a crowdfunding campaign that we're going to do. Andrew was on that call. He and I were floored. Within 40 minutes, we hit the goal on the call with the people. Oh. So the moment that the community got behind it, it also created something that other people don't have. And that is full support from the community as the idea is born at the same time. So that created that special ether. So that's why, Hugo, you experience not only an event, you experience the community at the same time. So virtually, we almost did what we do in an in-person event and brought it virtual. And I will tell you, the pandemic has exposed really bad events, and there's a lot of them. But it also has accelerated and exponentially grown us, because we do a lot of little things really well. Therefore, most of our competitors stopped doing virtual events because they couldn't do them. We're on to our fifth. I think we're doing another one in a little bit. So we're on to our fifth virtual event, and they just keep getting better and better, and more sponsors find us. Community gets more value. We're giving away more prizes, but the education gets better. So everything has, it's kind of like Vince Lombardi, he would make his players better. Next gen would get better. So we're in our prime now. We're revving up all from all this stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So let's dive into this a little deeper, because I got a ton of questions. One of the things I quickly had to learn, right, is you guys, I don't know if you partnered, hired, but you worked with this app called Whova. Now, there's a lot of people out there don't know Whova unless you're into, virtual expos and stuff like that. So talk to me a little bit about that, how that relationships began. I mean, there's got to be other options maybe, right?
There's a lot of other options. Yeah. WHOVA, Whova. So Andrew found this on his own when he was doing his own event, but most people don't know about Whova. We were using it for live events. What it does is it gamifies the experience. Mm-hmm. So it actually interacts with the attendees without us having to do extra work. So that helps the interactions within the app, as well as it has a community section, which would be like the hallway section of a hotel inside a ballroom. It has these community meetups. So Andrew's done a great job, because he talks to the team and he'll say, okay, what can we do? We could do a photo contest winner. And Andrew knows more about a lot of the technicalities of Whova, but it's probably one of, I don't know, Andrew, how many? They get like 50,000 events a year. They do. It's an amazing tool at this point.
Crazy. I mean, I was picking your brain, Andrew, constantly.
Yeah. No, the best way to describe Hoover, I'd say, is Facebook groups on steroids.
Totally.
It's just so fun, and like you said, it really is all the unique ways to go about the app and use it, and like create your own little mini meetups. And
Yeah.
Chris and I were chuckling. That was definitely one of the highlights of our recent Podfest Global. Is one of the meetups itself had 200 people that RSVP'd, and Chris and I are like, wow, I mean, we're getting 200, 300 per session, and if 200 people are showing up outside of our sessions, it's amazing. The community insights to help each other.
It's crazy. I mean, I was getting invites. To all these little sub meetings per se within an expo. So, I learned from your first event, which was last year. And this year I took it to a whole other level in here in our office. We definitely said, listen, everybody here has to get familiar with this app. I said, I found that it was actually easier to kind of work it through here.
Yep.
Than the PC, but it was pretty cool, man. And you're right. I met so many people. And one of the things that both of you always talk about is the community, right? The podcasting community being just so, easygoing, really cool, and willing to collaborate. And more important, willing to support each other. I love that aspect because that's what we're all about. And it's so true because through that app, I was able to reach out to so many people because I just wanted to learn what they're doing, how they're doing it, and how they're utilizing your expo. So let me ask you this. How challenging was putting this event together? Now, I know you had many under your belt, and I know you had last year's success. So how much more challenging was this one?
So we've done 2 globals. So those are the biggest that we do.
Yep.
The first one, Andrew, I'll let you tell Hugo the comment you made to me as we were doing it. You remember the comment you said? I said, this is a lot. And you said, what did you say? Remember it?
Yeah, it's like building an airplane in midair is the best way
He goes,
to describe it.
this is like sitting in a seat and trying to build an airplane midair. He
Here's
said
the wrench. Go fix the engine.
while we're up. Yeah. We were
Yeah.
been slingshot in the air. So when he said that, I couldn't stop laughing. And he goes, why are you laughing? I go, that's just such a perfect analogy for what we're experiencing. So to give you a contrast, the first one had about 320 speakers, 5,000 attendees. The second one had 520 speakers, and 8 languages spoken. I think the first one we had 2 languages, Andrew. We had 8 languages taught and 8 or 9, and we had over 6,000 attendees. When it gets certified, it'll be just under 6,000. But and it was we had a better pure attendee. Things were better the second time around because we learned a lot the first time on how we did the tickets and the processing. And we did something really interesting. Andrew suggested we give people codes for them to give away. Andrew, how many people, and you could just give us a guesstimate, applied for a code? Because this is interesting, Hugo. Every time we saw the numbers.
World was a perfect code.
Yeah, I think we literally had 450 plus people who applied for a code, actually. And that's on their own accord wanting to apply for a code.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a very unique thing in that someone says, give me a code. I want to give out some codes to my friends and family. So we realized that we didn't want to shotgun our message the second time around. We said, okay, we have this amazing community. How can we go deeper? How can we make it better? And we said, let's have Hugo and the different people know who we are, give it to their friends. We think they'll interact even better. And that's what deepened the innovation within the community.
Yeah, that was definitely that was very valuable. I kind of liked it. It was just a nice personal touch, even for ourselves, right? We shared that link to everybody, and it's funny because one of the I spoke at your event, and it was about building the A team. So it was the team behind the podcaster, right? And it goes right back to what you're talking about, is building that A team to actually launch something of this size. How vital was it to partner with people? Like, I don't know if you partner with a lot of organizations or a lot of individuals. Probably a combination of both.
Yeah, so we have a lot of, two things I can't stress this enough, and maybe it's because I grew up in a immigrant household. We all help each other out. It was kind of in the air of growing up in a big fat Greek family. Yeah. So you just, like, my cousins would always get me my jobs. Like, literally, people, how'd you get a job? I just asked a cousin. So, but literally, like, I'm not even exaggerating. My first 3 jobs were like this cousin, that cousin, the other cousin. So so maybe that's ingrained in my upbringing. So when I see other groups or Andrew sees someone and they're asking for help, if we're able to help them, we will go out of our way during the year, not even when we're doing events, to help them. So then when we need something, they actually come to us and say, hey, can we put out your speaker submission? So it's a rare thing that dozens of groups across different Facebook groups will support us. And not only that, but people like yourself might say, hey, let me give it to my team, or, hey, I'm part of this nonprofit. Hey, I'm part of this 1 million cups in my town. Can I give it? And we say, yeah, we'd love for you to share. So that's what creates, someone mentioned, they go, your social numbers are nowhere near what they should be for the amount of people you're attracting. How are you doing it? And it's like, we're focusing on the people we're attracting and treating them well and giving them what they want. So they bring us their friends. So it's like, we don't have to be the biggest social media rock stars. Now, don't get me wrong, we're all trying to grow those numbers, but that's not where these attendees come from. They come from word of mouth.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, that's one thing I have to say is, and I hope our audience is listening to this. One key point that Chris just said is it's about sharing, and knowing your audience and sharing, because I have to say, Chris and Andrew, one of the key things that I noticed was every time you guys were hosting a small event before the big one, you would say, hey, listen, guys, I'm going to share the database. I'm going to share the amount of people that are on this event. Here's their phone numbers. Here's their emails. And this is something most companies won't do. It's more like they protect that kind of stuff. And I noticed right away from attending so many shows and even meetings, right? People are hesitant to share the list at a meeting. I'm like, why would you hold back? If you want to grow, open it up. Be generous, be sharing, that's how the community develops. So I really admire one of those things that you were doing. I wanted to ask you though, I got to ask this on the funny side of things. At what point, or was there a point where you just like sat back and said, holy crap, man, this is getting to be bigger than I even expected it to be. And it's just going to be like you said, the fixing the airplane while it's in the air.
Andrew, you got one for the second global? Because the second one, I know it was overwhelming for.
Oh yeah, no. I still need to make a TikTok video on this where I would literally I would get 150 emails and I'd say, okay, I flex my knuckles. Yeah. I'd say I chug some water, chug some tea, and say, all right, I got this. I respond to every single one of them, and then I go and get dinner for an hour and come back and I have 170 within an hour. and so when I was getting that many emails that fast, yeah, just like from speakers, from attendees, I'm like, oh boy, this is a lot. But it's all fun. But that's definitely when I knew like how big this was actually getting. It's just like when you get 170 emails in 1 hour, it's just like, oh, okay,
yeah,
this is where we're at.
I remember that was going on, and then I couldn't keep up. So then Andrew we got Moose Little Thunder, which is Andrew's right hand. He helped Andrew offload. But then I remember in pre-week, really pre-week is a major conference, but we call it pre-week. I know you know this, but anyone listening, pre-week when we have 520 people for the main conference, pre-week is like 150 speakers. So it's like a lot. And the second go around pre-week had 2, sometimes 3 tracks. And Andrew and I did not allocate labor properly because in our mind, we thought pre-week was like the first one, which was only 1 track a day. So we got our asses handed to ourselves because we were running ragged. Luckily, what was amazing about pre-week, and this is why we have a pre-week, we were able to adjust by that Friday, not to be burnt out. Yeah, on Monday, because main week is its own beast. So we were really well staffed all week starting for the main week. But if I just remember pre-week, I said to him, we got to get better at this because we keep, and then we were able to adjust and tweak all the systems for the main week, which is really, important.
Yeah, I tell you, Andrew, going back to what you were just saying a little bit ago, I would be one of those guys sending you that email with just probably a stupid question, but you get back to me. Sometimes it was 1:32 a.m., but you were getting back to me, and I would read it the next morning. I'm like, these guys aren't sleeping.
Yep, for the people. Yeah.
I gotta ask you this, guys. I gotta ask you this: what crazy funny thing did you witness over this Podfest Global? Because I participated in so many. I try to hit as many of these little breakout sessions that you were hosting, and the topics were so broad. I mean, it was like, was it swingers, to technology. I was just like, I was like, holy shit.
Well, let's put some context in this so people understand. You're 100% right what you said, but let's put it. So because we look at ourselves as a creator community, we give everybody a voice. So we call them microcons. I know you know this, but anyone listening, a microcon is a mini conference around, like, we have a lot of people that talk about sex. So that's where Accidental Swingers might be, that show. They'll be talking about it. Then we'll have, it ranges from the different languages, but then we have faith, like we have faith, and we have faith con, and we also have sex con.
Yeah.
So we have all the shows.
And not the same day.
They don't go against each other. Broadway con for the Broadway performers.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. I was just fascinated because
there's a lot of crazy stuff in some of them. I remember one was how to un-F your business was the title of the show. And what was interesting about that one is they went to, if you're going to use profanity, what are the rules and regulations of how to do that? So I found that very interesting because, like, you see these shows, but you don't realize all these loopholes that they have to go through to publish that show. So there's a lot of interesting things for anytime if you've ever thought of creating something, we more than likely had someone talking about it,
That I have to believe. So anyway, Andrew, what about yourself? Share something that was just crazy that you were like, holy cow, this one blindsided me.
Well, what was really awesome is, Chris got connected to a guy named Marty Ray, and I'd never heard of Marty Ray, but he's a guy who went viral for an acoustic version of Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice. And it was really awesome to me. He played that. Well, we didn't play it for us live, but we got to see a recording of him playing that viral video. And he told the story about how he met Vanilla Ice and how Vanilla Ice called him and said, "Hey, it's Richard." And Marty Ray's like, "Hey, Richard."
I saw that. I remember this. Yes.
Yeah. So that was definitely a big funny highlight for me.
This guy was presenting, I think, he was connected through a cell phone, I think, in his driveway. Yeah, I remember this. Yeah, that was great, man. Yeah.
So he's awesome. As far as craziness goes,
that's a good one, Andrew.
A good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you,
Chris.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, how many sponsors? Usually when you go to a normal expo, I get it. There's 20 sponsors, sometimes 100. And you go to each booth, you chat with everybody. But the way you guys did it was phenomenal. I mean, you'd have your breakout session, whatever the topic was, and then afterwards, you could just move into the next booth, which was the actual, the actual sponsors that were exhibiting. It was pretty cool because I got to talk to each and every one of them, and I set up one-on-one meetings with all the companies. But how many were there?
I don't know, Andrew, you remember? Was it 20?
We had 21, I want to say.
21, but that credit goes to Andrew because he said to me, "Hey, I saw this other conference. We need to create a 30-minute break where people could just seamlessly go meet the exhibitors."
Yeah.
And we went over the numbers. Yeah, we went over the numbers with Huva, the company. And they said, I always ask, how are we doing? They go, "We've never seen anyone." To give you an example, Hugo, you'll appreciate this. So they showed us another event and they're like, they had tons of sponsors. They had 700 interactions, where they gave the emails. They go, "You guys had 4,131. So I said, "I guess we're doing." The guy goes, "You don't understand. We don't even see. This is not it was, you have a planet and then you have the sun. You guys are blowing all our numbers through the roof." They're like, I go, "So I guess that's good." He goes, "Yeah, that's whatever you're doing. Keep doing it. Cause we've never seen anything like it."
I'll tell you, it was my second this size of an event because yours was the first last year.
Right. Between
that one last year and this one, I've attended, a bunch of expos that were virtual. None of them compare. And I'll tell you, you're right, Chris, when you say that, because I noticed just in comments, you can't even keep up with the comments. It was just right down the list. I mean, and people just that were engaging, people that were going to into the booths themselves, the amount of people, it was pretty impressive. The whole thing. Listen, one of the things I had to ask you guys was communication, because I think it's so imperative to keep the community informed. And when you're launching such a massive type of an event, how do you keep everybody in sync? You guys do a hell of a job. I mean, even today, I attended your 3 p.m. meeting just to kind of keep people in the loop of what's going to come. So what do you talk to me a little bit about that communication?
So we do a lot of town halls. So we call them town halls. And
Yep.
just like in a community, you go to the town hall, here's what's going on. And we're very transparent. So people find that kind of, we're not polishing up the PR. We're just saying, here's what's going on.
Yep.
Here's what happened behind the scenes. Here's what we're trying to counteract it. We believe that if we could tell our audience the truth, one, they appreciate it, but two, they're going to be behind us. So what we did with the Pod Global, the first one, but especially the second one, we learned that what you said, Hugo, is true. We could not get to all there's only one Andrew. And even though he had help, what we asked the community in those town halls, like, can you guys create tutorial videos as you see people asking for them? And can you support us? And people started doing that. Or can you get to someone in chat before we could get to it? Because there's only so much of our bandwidth. So we put the onus on the community. And that was kind of a page out of Tony Hsieh's book, the founder of Zappos, or the guy that created the ethos of holacracy. So we kind of adopted this holacracy, meaning we're all in it together. Let's support each other. Please know that your speaker is doing the best they can. Support the speaker. If they're asked for a link, put it in the chat for them. So we tried to make the community responsible for their own experience. And that creates a different trajectory in the experience that we all have. Mm-hmm. And it also, you know this, you've been to a lot of events and you're a business guy. When you go into a room where the community knows each other, you could feel it. When you go into a room where everybody doesn't know each other, you can feel that too.
That's right.
You feel it either way. You know, you feel like these people are kind of friendly. They kind of know each other.
Yeah.
And I've been to a lot of events when people don't know each other. Let's say it's a dinner or lunch event. The moment the food is done, everybody's out the door. If people know each other, not only do they stay, you see them doing deals. You know, Hugo will go over there, I'll go over here. We start talking, hey, what are you up to? Blah, blah, blah. And you'll see that. And that's something I always enjoyed, having a community where we wanted to spend time with each other past the time that's done. And that's what happened.
Oh, that's great. Listen, what did you learn with something so big? And obviously you guys are just getting better and better, right? But what did you actually learn from this experience? Andrew?
I would say what we're really starting to learn, this has been so that, like Chris mentioned, you know, the first event is putting a plane in midair, just like, I don't know what we're doing. We're pretending like we know what we're doing. Just going to keep making it happen. The next two events, because they're done on a much smaller scale, we're learning what works on a smaller scale. This event really clarified how to help systematize and automate things and delegate things to make not only our jobs easier, but the attendee experience better, the sponsor experience better, the speakers experience better, and really making sure everyone has the optimal experience and getting the best content. And the reason why it's so beneficial is because I know Chris, especially, he has big visions for Podfest. And part of that includes, hosting Podfest events around the world. And essentially, the best example from the book E-Myth is McDonald's franchising, is that you got to know how to make it work, why it works, and use the exact salt that's been sitting in the ground for 20 minutes or 21 minutes, not 22 minutes. It's like, what's the exact formula? And this event really helped clarify, what are those systems and formulas that make it work, so we can keep making the experience better and keep putting on more of these events to help more people.
Dude, awesome answer. And the key thing that you just said there is delegate. A lot of people don't understand how to delegate properly. Chris, what about yourself?
Well, my theory of the community will always provide the answers you need if you're willing to listen. Yep. This was put to the test because this was a stress test when you have 520 people. Yeah. One, the content got better, which you saw from the first to second, got much better, even though the content, the first one was great.
Oh yeah.
It got even better the second time around. Yeah. So I learned that if you listen to the wisdom of the community, it only gets better. Secondly, one of our values is we won't chase celebrity speakers. And one of my theories was, if your community is lockstep with one another, they'll come to us. And I'm not going to mention the names, but they're people everybody would know. Andrew would call me. He's like, hey, so-and-so wants to speak at blah, blah, blah. I was like, how did they find out about us? One of our attendees or speakers told them they have to be here. And, with the event that size, there's always openings last minute. So I just tell Andrew, tell him yes. And he's like, but we don't have any spots. I go, just give it a day. And that's more experience. Like when you have that many, just give it a day. And then the next day it would open up. He's like, wow, how did you know that? I go, we have so many people. It's just a matter of math. And then we would plug them in. But what was interesting is they weren't they weren't as, in other words, our community is loyal to the community as a whole. So they didn't necessarily, you didn't see a spike in numbers that they were speaking. You
Yep.
might have seen some extra numbers, but our community would be loyal to the education in that track. And you would see that, and and they're loyal to each other. So the members in the community that put the time in to support one another,
Yep.
you'd see a spike in their numbers almost instantly in the
Interesting.
moment they would appear. And they're just people in our community. They're not necessarily famous. So when you see all that, it makes it all it makes it worthwhile. And you also do see some very ungrateful people out when you're dealing with that many people, and you have to be able to chalk it up as you're not going to always please everybody. However, we do strive to do our best to please as many people as we can.
Well, from what I saw, everybody was very happy, including, you know, my entire team loved it. I mean, we learned a lot. You know, you're never too old to keep learning, and I learned a lot. And one of the things I do, and I recommend this for anybody ever attending the next Podfest Global event, is reach out. Literally reach out not only to the sponsors, but you get such great feedback, and you learn not only about how to launch a business. There's so many topics. And that's what I loved about this is, you know, how to market on Instagram, social media marketing. How do I improve my LinkedIn profile? I mean, this is how crazy the gazillion of topics that just kept popping and flowing. And I would try to attend as many as I could. And not only that, but the one-on-ones just with the manufacturers, right? Your sponsors. That was awesome. I learned a lot. So listen, guys, I wanted to ask you this. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you, what did you learn about yourself? Andrew.
Oh, I'm always have to go first.
You've been tested. Tested, man.
What did I learn about myself? I learned, you know, it goes back to, you know, your delegation. You know, I'm definitely one of those guys where I feel like I have to do everything myself, and, you know, learning about myself that it is okay to delegate. It is okay to assign things to other people. And also what I learned too is, you know, even though it's a lot of work to put an event together, sometimes there are ways where you can make it easier on yourself to put that event together rather than stressing like, oh, I have all this to do. Like, there's always an easier way to do something. And that was really beneficial to hear. What else I learned about myself? Oh, and just, you know, all the speakers that, like Chris said, the content was so amazing, just inspiring us that, we just keep thinking bigger on a bigger level. And just, what people need the most is for you to share your message and share your story and share your content. And Chris mentions the word crowdsourcing, that we're all constantly helping each other with everything all the time. And if there's a very high chance, you know, something that someone doesn't, and if you're not telling other people about that thing that could help them, then why hold back? And so just a reminder to keep putting your voice out there. And the quote I like too is that your story is someone else's survival guide. And that was by Jessica something. But just remembering to put that out there too.
Good for you. Chris, I know you've launched plenty of events, 2 massive Podfest global events. What did you learn about Chris on this last one?
You know, it's just a reminder, but it's something I always learn when we do something this big, that no matter what you put on your plate, it could be the biggest thing, you could still get it done. Like I became much more efficient. And I mean, my emails would go down to 0 and they would keep proliferating. But I would tell you, I was more accountable to getting my work done than when I'm not on that kind of timeline. And it's interesting to see the different gears that you have. You might think you have a gear to 10, but this is like, we were testing ourselves and going way past that.
Absolutely.
So you realize you're able to accomplish a lot more if you put your mind to it. So it always makes me think, what are we leaving on the table every time we do something? And that kind of event shows us that there's a lot more possible than we think.
And what's next? What's the next Podfest? Talk to us.
So
Share it
we're
with
planning Podfest Masterclass. So we're going to be doing a Masterclass. Is interesting because we asked the community in town hall what they wanted.
Okay.
And this is what tells you what a great community we have. They said we should be giving the beginners more prizes to help them along their success. And instead of saying
great idea.
prizes, they said, how can we help the beginners for milestones? So we're going to have a pre-week, which will be all for the beginners, and it'll be live demos of these product demos, tools, but more, not rushed, more time for that. And then main week masterclasses, it's a 1-track every day, but masterclasses really deep dives into monetization and audience growth. And we almost exclusively focus on those 2 things. We go into deep dive analytics, cost per acquisition, a lot of things that would really, for someone that wants to really take this seriously, they're always like, I can't believe you guys even have this information, but we built such a deep bullpen.
That's awesome.
It's easy to bring it to the fold.
Great. Looking forward to that. I will absolutely register. So listen, guys, thank you so much for being on our show. But before we wrap up, I always like to ask one last question. And is that what one bit of advice would each one of you share with our audience, young entrepreneurs, business, all these college students coming out into the workforce? What one bit of advice would you share? Chris?
So I have a book that I wrote, and it's a very simple advice, but it's the book's title is called Start Ugly. And I don't tell people to start ugly and stay ugly, but I tell them to start ugly and perfectly execute along the way. In other words, we rob ourselves of overthinking. It's not ready. Who am I to do this? I would rather you start ugly and perfectly execute and get better. And anyone that looks at their start, like I've done 2,000 events, my first couple were horror shows, but I learned from them. And now here I am, how many events later? So if you're overthinking something, just remember to start ugly. It'll never be pretty, but then improve from that point forward and you'll be okay.
Awesome, Chris. Great advice. And remember, Start Ugly. Find it on Amazon, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Andrew, what about yourself?
One of my biggest pieces of advice I love giving people, and something I wish I knew early on, is whenever you want to do something, find someone who's already done it and ask them how they did it. And that's one of those things that make things easier. And to stack on top of that is, just because you haven't done something before doesn't mean you can't do it. And the classic example, I used to listen to a podcast by Brooke Castillo. She's one of the top life coaches in the world. And she said, if you tell a baby, hey, baby, you can't walk because you never walked before, the baby would be like, screw you. I see other babies walking. I want to figure out how to walk too. So just encouragement that if you're listening to this, and you do want to start your own virtual event, whether you talk to me or Chris or other people who are in that virtual event space, another speaker mentioned the quote, don't pay the dummy tax. Don't make the same mistakes that other people have made before you, and ask them, hey, what are the mistakes I can avoid, and what can I do to get there faster and make it happen? And so I definitely recommend that whatever you want to accomplish in life, with health, with money, with relationships, find your ideal person who's where you're at, and then have the courage to reach out and ask for advice, because for the most part, the world's actually a very helpful place and people love helping each other.
That's awesome advice. Andrew, Chris, thank you so much to the both of you for participating in this episode and sharing your experience with Podfest Global. And to all our listeners out there at T20E World, hope you got a lot out of this one. There's a lot of information and great advice. And to our listeners, this is Andrew, Chris, and Hugo, and we are checking out.